The room was packed. The investors were waiting. The CEO was all smiles until he realized the mistake. The translator hadn't shown up, and no one there spoke German. No one except her. The secretary, the same woman everyone ignored. The one he always told to be quiet. The one who served the coffee and listened in silence. But that day, the quiet one spoke, and when she started translating, the entire room went still. Stay till the end, because what this woman did proved that intelligence often hides where no one's looking. Jennifer walked down the hallway with quiet steps, balancing a tray of coffee and glasses of water. She knew no one there really saw her, at least not beyond her flawless uniform and the badge hanging from her neck. She was the secretary, the one who scheduled meetings, served drinks, took messages, and vanished. Invisible, quiet, convenient. That morning, the mood in the office was tense. An international investors meeting was set for exactly 10 a.m., and the company's CEO, Jason Williams, was already pacing the halls like a general on the battlefield. "Jennifer," he snapped impatiently. "Why are you still holding that? Go check if the room's ready." She hurried off without replying. "And bring French mineral water, not the local bottled stuff. These guys are picky." Jennifer swallowed hard. He didn't even look her in the eye, just brushed past her like she was part of the furniture. In the meeting room, she adjusted the chairs, checked the projector, and lined up the notepads. Everything was spotless, aligned, perfect. She liked doing things right, even if no one noticed. Jennifer had been working there for almost 2 years. She was efficient, punctual, discreet. She had a strong academic background, but due to a lack of opportunity and life's twists, she'd taken the job as administrative secretary right after returning from a scholarship exchange program. Yes, she spoke German fluently, but she had never told anyone. She had tried more than once to show she could take on more responsibility, but was always shut down with comments like, "That's not your role. Just keep the coffee warm. Your support, not strategy." She'd learned not to insist. That day, nerves were running extra high. The investors were high-level reps from an American multinational with plans to expand into Brazil. This deal could change the company's entire future. "The interpreter's confirmed, right?" Jason asked as he stopped at her door. "Yes, sir. She's due at 9:45, Jennifer replied calmly. "Is she good? Or one of those who freeze mid-sentence?" "She's a professional," Jennifer said. "Done any international events?" Jason snorted. "She better have. We can't afford to embarrass ourselves." Jennifer wanted to say, "You don't even need a translator." She wanted to say, "If she doesn't show, I can help." But she stayed quiet. She knew that with a man like him, any effort to show her worth would be taken as insubordination. And in his mind, that was the ultimate offense. At 9:40, the receptionist called to say the Americans had arrived. "And the interpreter?" Jason asked, already impatient. "Not yet." He glanced at his watch and spun on his heels. "These people think they can just waste our time." Jennifer passed by reception and saw the 3 foreign executives sitting down, reviewing documents. She recognized the accent of one of them and understood the quiet remark. "I hope this meeting isn't a waste of time." The words hit her like a punch. Her face flushed with secondhand embarrassment because she knew what was coming. Jason reappeared at reception minutes later, phone to his ear and a grim look on his face. "The interpreter canceled," he said flatly, looking directly at Jennifer, as if it were her fault. "She's not feeling well. Headed to the hospital. Just texted me." Jennifer froze. "Now what?" "Now we improvise," he snapped, clearly irritated. "Why are you still standing here? Go fix up the minibar in the meeting room." She opened her mouth, hesitated, and closed it again. Not the time. Not with him in that mood. But inside, something was starting to boil. In the meeting room, the foreign executives stood to greet the CEO. Jason gave a tense smile, waved broadly, and motioned to the chairs. Everyone sat. "Hello, everyone," he said, struggling with a heavy accent and a choppy rhythm. The executives exchanged glances. Jennifer, standing by the kitchen door, heard it all, his voice stumbling through memorized lines. Awkward pauses, nervous laughter, the tension rising. She crept toward the glass panel by the door. From there, she watched silently. The meeting clearly wasn't going well. Jason was sweating, fumbling through slides on the projector, mixing up terms, laughing nervously, waving his arms in a desperate attempt to fill in the gaps. The investors didn't bother hiding their discomfort. Then she heard it. "This is unacceptable. Let's reschedule." The investors stood up, murmuring among themselves. The deal was about to collapse. Jennifer didn't hesitate. She opened the door. "Excuse me," she said. Everyone turned to look at her. Jason's eyes widened. "What are you doing here?" She took a step forward. "Can I help? I speak German." Silence. The investors looked at one another. The CEO, standing near the table, needed a second to process what she had just said. "You what?" Jason asked, somewhere between disbelief and mockery. "I speak German, sir," Jennifer repeated calmly. "I can help if you'll allow me." He scoffed and shook his head. "Jennifer, you're a secretary, not a translator. This meeting involves millions. It's not the time to play interpreter." She held her posture, though her face was burning. "I'm not playing. I'm just trying to stop this meeting from falling apart because of a missing translator. I studied abroad. I have technical knowledge. I know exactly what this presentation is about. I can help, even if just to get us through this moment." Jason let out a sarcastic laugh. "And you really thought this was the right time to show off?" She swallowed hard, but before she could reply, one of the foreign executives spoke with a touch of impatience. Jason didn't understand a word. He looked around, lost. Jennifer turned to the investors and, with complete calm, began speaking in German. Clear, confident, natural, like she'd done this 1,000 times. "Gentlemen, there's been a last-minute issue with the interpreter, but I'd be happy to assist with translation, if that's all right with you." The entire atmosphere in the room shifted. The men nodded and settled back into their chairs. Jason looked at Jennifer like he was watching a shadow rise from the ground. Then, with no other choice, he gave a brief, impatient nod. "Fine, go ahead," he muttered, like it cost him something to say it. Jennifer picked up the projector remote and stepped to the head of the table. Her voice was calm, yet firm. She moved seamlessly between both languages, translating sentences, explaining data, keeping a professional tone, and the confident presence of someone who wasn't just winging it. The executives started paying more attention to her than to anything else in the room. Questions began flowing in. They wanted details, and Jennifer answered clearly, even addressing points not shown on the slides, things she'd picked up quietly from previous meetings. Meanwhile, outside the conference room, a few employees gathered quietly near the glass. Rosanna from accounting had her eyes wide open. "Guys, is that Jennifer translating?" "Jennifer from the coffee cart?" someone murmured. "She's translating everything," said a third. "Her German is flawless." Inside the room, the mood had shifted again, this time with admiration. Smiles, nods, eyes full of respect. One of the executives turned to Jennifer and said something clearly appreciative. She responded smoothly, thanking him, and even those who didn't speak the language understood. She had earned their respect. Jason folded his arms, visibly uncomfortable. He clicked through the slides like he couldn't wait for it to end. But it was too late. He wasn't the star of the meeting anymore. Jennifer stood her ground. She translated the entire business expansion proposal, walked them through the comparative graphs, and provided global market context with ease. She showed that she didn't just understand what she was saying. She'd been listening all along. At the end of the presentation, one of the executives stood and shook her hand. He said something directly, looking her in the eyes. She smiled and translated. He said without me, the meeting would have been a disaster, and that he was impressed by the clarity of the proposal. Jason didn't react, just gave a stiff nod. Another older executive approached her and gave a quick compliment. Jennifer simply thanked him and walked them to the door, closing the meeting with the same quiet elegance she had shown throughout. When the door shut behind them, the silence in the room was different now, unsettling, heavy. Jason was still sitting, staring blankly at the black projector screen. Jennifer calmly gathered the papers, stacked everything neatly. Finally, he spoke. "How long have you been able to speak like that?" She looked him straight in the eye. There was no anger, just the steady gaze of someone who had kept quiet for far too long. "Since before I started here, sir. I studied abroad on a scholarship. I tried showing a few times, but you never listened. He looked away. Why didn't you ever say anything? Because you never asked. He lowered his eyes. No apology. No praise. Nothing else. She closed the folder, straightened her badge, and turned to leave. But before stepping through the door, she paused for just a second. We may serve coffee, sir, but that's never stopped anyone from understanding the whole world. And then she left. For the first time, no one told her to be quiet. That morning, Jennifer returned to her desk as if nothing had happened. She typed a few reports, answered 2 phone calls, and updated the boss's calendar with the afternoon meetings. The room where the meeting had taken place still had the door slightly ajar. The light from the projector, now off, cast soft shadows on the walls. But the energy was different now. People who had never noticed her before were suddenly paying attention. Some greeted her with a subtle nod. Others whispered behind their hands. She heard the murmurs, but pretended not to. It was easier that way. She had learned early on, real respect isn't earned by shouting. It comes from consistency. Rosanna from accounting was the first to approach. Jennifer, can I ask you something? She smiled. Of course. How long have you spoken German? Since I was 18. I got a scholarship to study abroad. Later, I did an online specialization. Rosanna blinked, clearly impressed. So why are you working here as a secretary? Jennifer shrugged. Because no one ever asked what else I could do. Throughout the day, the comments grew. In the break room, 2 senior managers whispered. I thought she just took messages. She saved the entire meeting. Jason almost lost the deal. In the hallway, a young intern approached her with respect. Hi, Jennifer. Would you mind helping me write an email in German? She helped. No arrogance. No showing off. She explained, corrected, smiled. For the first time, they were seeing her as more than her job title. Jason, on the other hand, stayed silent. He spent the whole day locked in his office, not calling on Jennifer once. When she knocked late in the afternoon to deliver a document, he just nodded. No thank you. No comments. No eye contact. But his discomfort was clear. His hand trembled slightly as he signed the page. She left the room with the calm of someone who doesn't expect applause. When you've lived most of your life behind the scenes, you learn to celebrate in silence. The next day, an email arrived. Subject, proposal review, technical translation. Jennifer Abreu was listed under the strategic planning team. They asked her to revise the final version of the proposal before sending it to the investors. She reread it. Her name was in the body of the email, in bold. Jennifer, your support in translation was essential. We'd like to keep you involved in this process. It wasn't a promotion. It wasn't a raise. But it was a first step, a door slightly open. A few days later, a new project began circulating through the company, this time with mixed meetings in English and German. And Jennifer was officially invited to participate. Jason still avoided admitting he'd been wrong. Still arrogant, but with less weight in his voice. Deep down, he knew, if it hadn't been for her, that meeting would have sunk a multimillion-dollar deal. Late one Friday afternoon, as she was straightening the papers on her desk, Jennifer sensed someone walking up behind her. It was Eduardo, the director of international partnerships. Jennifer, he said warmly, we're reorganizing the teams for the next project cycle, and I'd like to invite you to join the expansion team. Her eyes widened slightly. Me? You. You have the exact profile we're looking for. And honestly, you've shown that you're capable of far more than this company has ever let you show. She paused for a few seconds, her heart racing, but her voice was calm. Thank you. I truly appreciate it. Of course. Take your time to think about it. But let me be clear, the offer is real, and it's well-deserved. He left. She stood there for a moment. She didn't need applause anymore. That was enough. The following week, Jennifer had a new desk next to the strategic planning team. It wasn't the front desk anymore, not the coffee station. It was the desk of someone who finally had a voice. Some people still looked at her with surprise, others with subtle disdain. But she didn't care because now, finally, she was being heard. By the end of that month, a new secretary had been hired to take Jennifer's old position. During the introduction, Jason kept his usual firm tone. This is our new assistant. I hope she's as efficient as Jennifer was. It was the first time he'd said her name with respect. That evening, Jennifer walked out of the office with light steps. The sky was clear. The breeze was calm. She felt different, not because of a new title, but because someone had finally looked beyond the name tag. The new department was different. There were no glass walls, and people actually listened. Jennifer now attended international expansion meetings. She was no longer the woman who just took notes, or sat in silence, waiting to be needed. She was heard. She was consulted. She was respected. She still wore the same simple clothes, used the same color-coded notebooks, but now people turned to her when clarity was needed. On Monday, a strategic meeting was pulled together last minute. A new European partner wanted to go over the details of a proposal. Jason was present, but this time, he wasn't leading alone. When the guests entered the room, Jennifer was already at the table, with her laptop open and the files ready. The foreign executive smiled when he saw her. He remembered her from the previous meeting. "Nice to see you again. You were brilliant." Jennifer smiled back. "Thank you. It's a pleasure to work with you again." Jason cleared his throat, tried to regain control of the conversation. But Jennifer now moved effortlessly between both worlds. She translated, explained, connected, and everyone in the room could see it was her building the bridges. At the end of the presentation, the executive turned to the directors. "You're lucky to have someone like her on your team." Jason just nodded, jaw tight. But this time, he didn't interrupt. He didn't downplay. At the coffee break, one of the company's senior managers pulled a chair up next to Jennifer. "Have you ever thought about leading a project?" she asked casually. "Lead a project?" "Yes. With your background and fluency, you could do much more. This company needs people who know how to listen and speak with clarity." Jennifer paused for a moment. "No one's ever invited me into that kind of conversation." "Well, now you are." Days later, she was asked to review documents for the company's new branch in Lisbon. She signed as International Project Assistant. It was just a title, but for someone who once felt invisible, it sounded like a shout. Even with the change, Jennifer remained the same with everyone. She still greeted the interns, still helped anyone who asked, still showed patience to those who hadn't yet adjusted to her new role. At the end of the month, the whole team was invited to a recognition event, one of those formal dinners celebrating milestone achievements. Jennifer considered skipping it, but decided to go. She wore a simple black dress with long sleeves, tied her hair back, and arrived right on time. As she entered the room, some greeted her with warm smiles, others with visible surprise. Jason was at the back of the room. He saw her from a distance, but for the first time, didn't look away. During dinner, one of the directors took the stage for a brief speech. "This quarter was challenging. We faced obstacles, but we also had some surprises. One of them showed us that talent often hides in the most unexpected places, and that true strength sometimes lives in silence." Some people turned to look at Jennifer. She lowered her eyes, slightly embarrassed. The director continued, "Jennifer, you didn't just save a meeting, you changed how we see what it means to be essential." "Thank you." Applause filled the room. She gave a small smile, subtle, but her heart raced like never before. The next day, when she arrived at her desk, there was a note waiting for her. "Congratulations. You deserve it." Jason never signed notes. He never gave congratulations. But that gesture said more than any speech. She tucked the note into her planner, between the pages marked for goals. In the weeks that followed, Jennifer was invited to join strategic decision-making meetings. She began advising others who had questions about international documents, and little by little, she became a point of reference. But the most beautiful part? She never stopped listening, never stopped observing. She never forgot the days she served coffee and no one heard her voice. And because of that, she started speaking up for those who were also ignored. One afternoon, a young intern knocked on the door. "Jennifer, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Is it true you started here as a secretary?" She smiled gently. "It's true. And now you're leading international projects?" "Also true." The girl smiled, hopeful. "Then maybe I can get there someday too." Jennifer replied, "Not maybe. If you're willing to learn and not give up, you will." That day, as she left the building, Jennifer passed the lobby mirror. She paused for a second. Same clothes, same tied-back hair, But inside, she was someone else now. Someone no one told to stay quiet anymore. Someone who, even after so much silence, had won over the entire room. Her new office wasn't luxurious. Just a light wooden desk, a shelf with technical books, and a window overlooking the company courtyard. But it was hers, and that was enough. Jennifer arranged her papers with the same care as always, managing calendars, drafting, and editing documents. But now she also led. She coordinated meetings with other branches, oversaw new hires, and translated contracts without having to prove, over and over, that she was capable. She didn't boast. She never tried to be the center of attention. But she stood firm, right where people once told her she didn't belong. Sometimes, between meetings, she would walk the same hall she used to, her steps still quiet. But now people stopped her, asked for her help, and she helped, with patience, never with pride. Yet inside, something had changed, a deep sense of belonging. Not from her job title, but from her story. One day, she ran into Jason in the elevator. They were alone. He looked hesitant, a folder tucked under his arm, his face tired. "Jennifer," he said, "no small talk. I owe you an apology." She looked up surprised. "For what?" "For underestimating you. For treating your intelligence like it was invisible." She took a deep breath. "I don't hold grudges, Mr. Jason. I just learned not to expect recognition from someone who refuses to see." He nodded. "You're right. But I did see. Maybe too late, but I saw." Jennifer gave a slight nod. "That's a start." The elevator doors opened. She stepped out first. Jason stood still for a moment, staring at the empty space where once stood an invisible employee, and now a woman who forced him to reflect. That night, at home, a cup of tea warming her hands, Jennifer pulled out that old note from her planner. "Congratulations. You deserve it." It was short, but it carried weight. That piece of paper wasn't a trophy. It was a reminder that yes, it is possible to open doors without kicking them down. That talent speaks, even when the world tries to silence it. That dignity has nothing to do with job titles, and everything to do with the courage to stay true to yourself when no one's watching. That's the lesson. The world moves too fast. It shouts too much. It judges by appearances, by titles on the door, by who's in the spotlight. But sometimes the one who changes everything is the one who spent too long being ignored. And when that person finally speaks, it's not to impress. It's to show that knowing how to listen is the first step to making the world work better. Have you ever felt invisible somewhere? Have you ever had to hide your talents because no one gave you space? Jennifer's story is a powerful reminder. Your worth isn't written on a name badge. It lives in the courage to keep going, even when no one's clapping. If this story touched you in some way, leave a comment below. Tell us what you thought and where you're watching from. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with someone who needs to hear this today. See you in the next story.